Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well today. And I hope you guys are enjoying the weather, if the weather is great on your end. Not too bad today in Toronto, a little bit cold. We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Hey there, Annette. Hope you're doing well today. Okay, and so for everyone tuning in after now, there is always the replay. And so I just want to say good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Changemaker20. I'm hoping you're all having an amazing day so far. And I want to thank you for always and for spending your afternoon with us today. So if this is your first time, this is a platform where we do get to chat with our subject matter experts in an open forum for all of you to ask questions and speak to them directly. And so if you check out down below, there is a chat button. I want you guys to hit the chat button, go to all panelists and to all attendees. And I just want you guys to just introduce yourself, just hi, and just say yes, that I'm here. We'd love to engage you guys and get your questions as we go through today and really make this about you. Today, we have Ozioma Egwuonwu. Ozioma is an internationally celebrated speaker, strategist, and scholar. She is the founder of BurnBright International, a transformational living, consulting, and development company that specializes in the activation of human potential. I think that's super cool. She has spoken with and taught at educational institutions like Oxford and Columbia University, as well as worked with governments and Fortune 500 companies. In 2012, she also founded World Dream Day. I am putting that on my calendar. It is on September 25th. It is the first ever global empowerment day dedicated to activating ideas, goals, and dreams. And so there really is no better person who I can think of that can talk to us about overcoming this COVID crisis. Today, we want to look at these challenging times that no one saw, but also the opportunity that comes from it. That which allows us to rise and reimagine what's possible in the face of this unforeseeable future. So Ozioma, why is it that during moments like this that great leaders, businesses, and movements are born?
Oh, wow, Daniel. I think that, moments like these give us the opportunity to truly show what we're made of. It's like very often the tendency is to kind of go with the same old, and to just keep things as business as usual. But when we have moments like pandemics or moments of great crises, we have the opportunity to really rethink, reimagine, and step forward. And what you're seeing, especially today, is you're starting to see people who are saying, wait a minute, I have something to offer. I have something to say. I have a point of view. I have a way of helping other people navigate this or communities navigate this. And for me, it's been, as devastating as it's been to see what's been happening, it's also been so inspiring to see so many different types of levels of leadership rising in this moment.
And so for everybody tuning in, as well as the people that are tuning in after the fact, and there's something I want to know as well, how do we all move beyond the fear and frustration and instead move towards the evolution of what you call inner capacity and global contribution?
Well, when this situation first occurred, right? And because I specialize in kind of watching trends and researching and then being able to do, what I guess Otto Scharmer would call sense making, right? Really kind of feeling into the space and understanding what is happening here and how do we respond, And what I have found is kind of what I call a 3-part response framework that I see people going through, that I myself have gone through, and that I've been currently coaching people on how to navigate. And the first part is really about being able to rise up, right? There's no way for you to truly step into a higher order of leadership if you aren't first ready to say, okay, I see what's around me, I see this confusion, but I have to be able to rise and get a higher perspective, right? That omniscient perspective that says, okay, what are the elements that are in play here? What are the challenges that we're facing? So the invitation first and foremost is, regardless of where you are, is just to say, how can I remove myself from this current context and have a perspective that really allows me to see what's going on here, to see more of the elements. And so we call that first phase response is about rising up. And then once we rise up, we have a level of a certain level of perspective that then says we begin to turn our lens or our viewpoint up and out and say, what is possible? And that's the element of reimagining, right? Thinking to ourselves, okay, the current reality is what it is, but what is possible as a result of me having risen up, of me seeing new possibilities from this vantage point? Because when we're on the ground, we see things differently, right, than when we're looking above. And so this opportunity to say, okay, what does the system need? What does my community need? What does my organization need? What does my family need? And also, what do I need in this moment? And reimagine new possibilities. And then the third part of the response framework is to begin to get into the process of reinventing. I think many of us have realized that, it's no longer business as usual, right? The world has fundamentally transformed in the sense that what we knew is not what we currently know or what will be. I think it was Stephen Blank from the Lean Startup Methodologies that spoke about this idea of, if your business model, the way you're thinking is the same as it was 30 days ago, it can't be, So this awareness that things have rapidly changed and they are rapidly changing. And so we need to be responsive. We need to be able to not allow ourselves to get caught in the minutia and the challenges of the moment, but to allow ourselves to rise up and get a certain level of perspective that then enables us to be able to reimagine new possibilities and then reinvent them as well, individually and collectively, because there is no one person who's going to be able to do this alone. This is a collaborative, co-creative moment, and that's what makes it also so exciting.
Mm-hmm. And for a lot of people, this was like a big reality check, kind of like a gut punch, because no one saw this coming, and can't help but really be in that reaction mode. And so for the people that kind of caught their bearings and realigned themselves, how do then we take where we are currently and transition into really responding to these times at that higher level that you're speaking about?
Higher level, yeah. And again, I don't want to minimize the nature of what's happening here. We know about the nature of the unemployment, the health challenges. There's so much going on, but it's also an opportunity, again, for that rise up, reimagine, reinvent. And so once we begin to get a sense of, oh my gosh, what is possible for my business, whether that's, or for my leadership, in terms of maybe you were operating at a level where you were kind of just a follower, and you now see, as you've risen up, that there's an opportunity for you to bring forth your gifts. What I invite people to do is to begin to explore what I call the goal strategy framework. And that's, again, each letter stands for something, right? First, the idea is the G stands for gift. Every single one of us have some gift that we can bring forth during this moment. And I feel that for those of us who are stuck in the fear, the gift or the possibility of giving that gift can be what moves you from fear into being willing to explore new frontiers. And so identifying what is the gift, and even if it's just, a level of positivity or checking in on your friends and family every single day, or if it's about, if you're a business leader, what is that new offer that I'm going to enter into the marketplace with? What is the way in which our organization can begin to be of service in these times? So the first is the gift that you wish to give. Then the O in goal stands for organization, or how will you organize yourself? Because the way in which you might have organized yourself before, whether it was a matter of having more resources or a matter of, again, you now have distributive teams. So the way in which teams are organizing themselves has to fundamentally change from when you might have been all in the same building or all on the same floor or maybe all in the same room. So looking at, okay, once we're clear on how we want to make a difference or how we want to lead differently, how will we organize ourselves? And then the A stands for activate, which is different than just taking action. Very often the desire is just to start doing things, trying things out. And yes, the spirit of experimentation and being iterative with our methodologies is important, but it's also important that we just don't take action, but we truly activate. And that is about being strategic about where, when, how, right? How will I activate this gift? How will I activate the way in which our organization is operating? Then L stands for leverage, right? Because as you get into motion and as you start to see about the resources you have, you start to say, okay, what can we leverage, right? You look at companies like LVMH, right? They were one of the first responders in terms of turning some of their plants in Paris to hand sanitizers, right? Hand sanitizer factories. So all of these ways in which, what are our resources now? What can we leverage? You know, for me, my gift of strategy was what I began to leverage and say, how can I serve? So I started doing free webinars and really trying to serve in that way. Every one of us have something that we can leverage and we can offer. And the S is speed. Because sometimes we have to think about, is my speed appropriate for these times? And sometimes we're moving too fast. Sometimes we need to slow down. So always checking in on what is the appropriate speed for the time that we're in, because it may require you as a leader to really pick up the pace. And it also may require you as a leader to slow down. And so again, the goals framework is all about the way that we bring our gifts into this moment and we leverage our resources, we activate fully, we organize ourselves differently, and we also pay attention to the nature of the speed at which we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the company that transitioned to making hand sanitizers as they saw that there's a large need for it. Have you seen any other organizations who have pivoted or shown great examples of leadership that have led the way, that are, you know, continuing to tread the correct way amongst this crisis?
I mean, there's so many companies. I mean, one of the companies that I consistently admire for the way in which they are being always a beacon is Microsoft, you know, and the way in which they immediately were, you know, there were things they were doing in terms of their employee, in taking care of their employees. That was also very inspiring. But you think about even from before that, earlier this year at Davos, about, you know, going carbon negative. And so you start to see that the companies that were already starting to experiment with different forms of leadership and more bolder forms of leadership, you're seeing that also translate into a bold form of care. Again, there's not, how do I say this? There's so much to be done. You know what I mean? That there is no minimum for the way in which an organization as well as an individual can make a difference during these times.
No, that's amazing. And speaking of leadership, and you know, as before we continue, for everyone who wants to ask,
one moment though, I
yeah,
do want to say that's an example of a big company, right? But there's also so many other companies and entrepreneurs. And I think, to me, one of the big heroes, in the same way you talk about we talk a lot about the frontline workers. Well, in the world of business, in the world of, you know, it's the entrepreneurs that are really trying their best to try to figure out, how do we stay afloat? How do we stay alive? So I think in this conversation of leadership and in this conversation of navigating uncertainty and transformation, we also have to honor the efforts of many of the entrepreneurs all over the world that form the backbone of our economies.
And I think it's when these entrepreneurs can come up with the next level of innovation amongst all this that you really get to see some of those new businesses or ideas that you're mentioning really rise up to the top.
Absolutely.
I was just mentioning, if anyone wants to ask Ozioma anything, definitely leave it down in the comment section below, in the chat below. I'd love to ask her. But before that, Ozioma, when we were mentioning leadership, you mentioned leader of possibility often amongst many of our conversation. And so what does it mean to be a leader of possibility?
Oh, you know, when I think about this frame, right, of leader of possibilities, right, because it's not just one, it truly is about the way in which, in that moment when you begin to reimagine what's possible for your company, for your life, for the world, it is the leader of possibility that takes their own personal, kind of almost like a personal pledge to say, I believe this needs to happen in the world, and I am going to do my best with all of my resources, with all of the gifts that I have, to further and to advance these new paradigms, these new ways of thinking, these new ways of doing. I think about a recent article written by Charles Eisenstein, you know, called "The Coronation," and another piece written by Arundhati Roy about this notion of that this moment can be a hole or it can be a portal. And so a leader of possibility sees this pandemic as a portal. There are many systems all over our world that have not been working, right? And this opportunity right now is the invitation to be able to reinvent. And so we're going to start to see different ways in which systems change becomes possible. I always go back to Otto Scharmer and what he's doing right now in terms of the Gaia project, which is amazing. I was on a conference call with 1,000 different people, well, 1,000 on Zoom and about 500 more. But this idea of the global convening, where we begin to say, what are the ways in which we can re-envision and reimagine in, our environment, right? What's happening with climate change? What's happening with food justice? What's happening with overall justice systems and power and control? Everything right now is in flux. And we can continue to envision this dystopic kind of future, or we can, as leaders of possibility, consider what are the highest futures, right? The highest positive possible futures. And what is our individual and collective role in that? So leader of possibility is not this lone wolf leader, but someone who says, okay, there's work that is for me to do and ways in which I have to step up from within myself. And then there's ways in which I now have to navigate and collaborate with others so that together, as we know, the model of leadership is often now more and more team leadership. So leaders of possibility are those who explore what has to evolve and advance within themselves, and also are working collaboratively with others in order to make those possibilities become real in our world.
Now, how does one be a leader that can see this vision, this grandiose future, but also still manage and juggle what's in front of them? If their business is day-to-day, a day-to-day struggle to really maintain, or they're really fighting to become a part of what's going to happen in the next couple of months to still be around. How does one juggle between having that long-term vision and still meaning the short-term consistency?
Yeah. Well, I believe the best leaders are always living in more than one world, right? And more than one timeline, right? You have to do and be and address what is the momentary and what is the now, but you also have to become very adept at being able to focus on what is next. So it's about that dance between the now and the next, right? And the way that you do that is by making sure that you get a lot more structured. I think what we're seeing is people realizing everything from productivity skills of how do you kind of like time block your calendar to make sure that you have, time to focus on what's needed now. And so I would say that the way that you navigate it is by making sure within your schedule that you put in time, visioning time, reimagining time, whether it's in the morning or whether it's at the end of the day or whether it's at lunch, in the same way that we know that meditation has so many positive effects, right? And you're seeing more and more people engage in meditation. There needs to also be an opportunity to focus on practices that are creative visualization and the envisioning practice, and what we call enhancing your visionary intelligence, right? And your visioning intelligence, because it is the ability to see that then inspires your workforce, right? And your other collaborators to begin to activate on that possibility. And what we're speaking about truly is about the nature of story. And we know there's a great deal of research that comes around that addresses the notion of that we are, storied beings, right? It is all about the narrative. And so you have the narrative that is the current context, but then there is the emerging context, right? And even in the world of strategy, we talk about deliberate strategy and emerging strategy. So the deliberate strategy is a strategy that says, here I am in the A and B, and the emergent strategy acknowledges the wavy lines and the squiggly lines. And so I think it is about adopting more of an emergent strategic approach rather than the deliberate approach. The deliberate approach to strategy, from an academic standpoint, comes from a place where when you have more control and you know what is really happening, and there's a lot more certainty. We are not in a time of certainty. We are in a time of uncertainty. And so more emergent practices is what's needed right now. And that is the way that we navigate the now and the next, taking an emergent perspective to the way in which we engage strategy, and also taking time to, regardless of what's happening in the moment, we have to also build in times to envision what is coming next, because it is coming. There is a new future that is rising, and it has to be built today. Every single day we are co-creating that new possibility. And it's important that we give time to it.
Oh, that's amazing. And maybe just one more question. I know we're going to push it a little bit, but what can you leave off with us today for the entrepreneurs that are going to be tuning into this, or the person that's just an employee and they're working to just get to get to the next day? What do you have to leave off for them?
Wow. I would say that the invitation is for you to become more aware that the rules of whatever game that existed before have fundamentally changed. And so you are invited to come up with ideas, for your own life, for your family, and also what may work within the workplace. And so I would say the biggest gift that you can give to yourself is to get innovative. The biggest gift you can give to yourself is to become an explorer and a pioneer. And what does that look like? That means not just looking at the context of your country and the information that's pouring through. It is about expanding your lens, whether it's using Google Trends or reading different types of magazines. This is the opportunity for you to develop the way in which you show up in the world and the information you're taking in so that you can actually innovate more effectively. And so this is, when I say this, what I'm speaking about is becoming adept at trends, becoming adept at brailing culture and understanding what's going on within the cultural context so that you then know what choices and what actions you need to make in order to move accordingly. I say all this because, in February, while everyone didn't believe this was a thing, my friends, they laugh about it. They were like, how did you know? Because I was watching, I was reading, I was looking at what was happening in China, in Nigeria, in America, in Europe. And when you start to expand your lens and truly operate from a global citizen perspective, you will begin to see the signals. And those signals will be an invitation for you to begin to act accordingly. And so that's my invitation, is that all of us really take this opportunity to become more global in our perspective, while still obviously focusing on the local, but to really have that dance between the local and the global so that we understand the moving parts of the situation and where everything is headed.
Wow, that's a perfect way to end this off. That was amazing. I know we did go a little bit over time, but I definitely think that was worth it. And we definitely need to have you come back for something much longer than just 20 minutes. And so, Ozioma, thank you so much for coming in today. For everyone who's tuning in, thank you so much for staying tuned in for Changemaker20 and for continuing your ongoing support. We love it whenever we get to engage with you. And so if you guys have any further questions or want to book Ozioma, as she is one of our roster speakers for any custom virtual event or for consulting, definitely shoot me an email and I'd love to get you connected. And so for many of you guys who would like to see yourselves even contribute or speak on the same level as some of these speakers that we've had, we are launching a beta program, which we're only doing once for the lifespan of this service, on virtual speaking. And so if you are interested, definitely shoot me a message after this event as well. We will be continuing our virtual speaker series with our virtual lunch and learn tomorrow with Zaina. And Zaina is a healthcare future strategist with SE Health. And just last week, she gave us a mind-blowing look into the future. And we're going to continue that conversation with a lot more of the questions that we left off from last time, as well as additional ones you guys may have for tomorrow. And so once again, Ozioma, I want to thank you one more time for being here today. This definitely won't be the last time we're going to have you on this platform. And to everyone at home, continue to take care, stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, and we'll see you soon.
And don't forget to burn bright.